Hello, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of the Healing Hour with Albert Vodka, head of our Pasadena clinic. We are joining him tonight as we talk about the topic of childhood obesity. The month of September is highlighting childhood obesity, and this is truly a topic that is very important to both Albert and myself as we both work extensively with youth. Just giving you an overview snapshot of tonight, the growing size of our childhood obesity problem in the United States is not hard to size up. On any given day, you can observe a local mall, a school, or perhaps even your neighborhood, and chances are that you'll see several overweight youth. According to data from the 2015-2016 CDC study, it shows that nearly 1 in 5 school-age children and young people ages 16 to 19 years old in the United States has obesity. That's a phenomenal number. That's more than 13.7 million obese children and adolescents. Tragically, it's not just an epidemic of body image that happens overnight. Obesity dramatically increases a child's future risk for heart disease, diabetes, joint pain, and so much more. Fortunately, much can be activated to undo the damage, and one indisputable fact is that parents and loved ones need to advocate better practices on behalf of children. This month, let's educate ourselves and our children about the formidable forces like technology, poor nutrition, and sedentary lifestyles that have conspired, they're not inspiring, they're conspiring most definitely to produce the most overweight nation of children in our history. We also want to chat about Chinese medicine's role in helping to reduce obesity, including support for younger children. It's time to get the community strong for our children. So Albert, thank you so much for joining us this evening. Going into this topic, how would you describe the process of how obesity develops in children?
Well, thanks for having us, Tiffany. I think this is an important topic, September being Childhood Obesity Awareness Month. And so we want to, put a little pinpoint on this because, those stats that you said were a little staggering to me when I read that 13.7 million obese children and adolescents are in the United States. Just that number alone is ridiculous.
Right.
Among the nation, it's even not, it was like 130, I think it was like 180 million people or children and adolescents were obese. And that's really disheartening. And it kind of hurts my heart, honestly, to see that, because I think one of the other stats that I saw was that if a child starts out obese, you have a 10-year-old child who is obese, then 80 to 90% of those 10-year-old obese children turn out to be obese adults. And the problem with that is that they're setting themselves up for a life of major health concerns. So
right.
I'll get into that later. But how does it develop? There's a lot of factors. Diet can be one of them.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a big factor. We'll talk about that, but just the amount of different types of foods nowadays that's so processed, that is calorie rich, but nutrients, has no nutrients in it in that kind of sense. So
right.
That things, prepackaged foods, sugary beverages that go along with this. And then lack of physical activity. I think that's a big part of this is too. So you're not only eating bad, but then you're not moving enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in our last newsletter, I wrote about a lot of movement in our last newsletter. And one of the things that stuck out was, having an hour a day for adolescents and small children. So think about, as adults, are we even getting an hour a day? Mm-hmm. So to think about that. So not just become a weekend warrior, but children need this. Maybe they're getting in physical education in school, but maybe they're not.
Right.
And then that's kind of setting them up for, basically for the metabolism to slow down in order to do that.
That's actually an interesting point, because I know you have children yourself. Physical education now in schools, what type of time length is that on a daily basis? Do you happen to know?
I don't know exactly. I think my son does about 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes, I believe. But they have like recess, and then they have an actual physical education.
Right.
So it's broken up throughout the day. And what I was going to say about that hour, at least an hour a day, was that it can be broken up.
Right.
Maybe you don't have an hour. Some of us don't. So maybe you do 15 minutes here, 20 minutes there, half an hour here, and so forth. And you just kind of break it up a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But that can also be taken care of like, hey, we're going to the grocery store. We are parking far away and we're walking in.
Right.
We are taking the stairs instead of taking the elevator this time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're walking around the block after dinner. It's a nice, fun thing, family thing to do as well. So little things like that, you know, you can kind of perk up there. And there's plenty of ideas out there if you get creative to go along with that. But I think it's this combo of patterns that kind of builds up. You know, genetic factors are in there too, of course. But, you know, I think it's a combination of lots of things that can happen. You know, physical inactivity, the environment that you grow up in, stress plays a factor, sleep plays a factor. I mean, that's what I'm saying by this big combination of factors.
Can we just touch on the aspect of genetics? Because I imagine a lot of parents do wonder, is this genetic that this is happening to my child? What would be your feedback on that aspect?
Well, there's a portion to play there. I mean, I mean, for instance, bone density, right? You have like, you know, small, medium, and large. If you look at your wrist, for instance, you know, like, you know, can you reach all the way around it? Maybe that's a smaller or medium, you know, size wrist and so forth. But that's kind of like your bones that you're built with. So yeah, bones have, you know, you are kind of built with the body that you're built with. But that doesn't mean that has to have that large layer of adipose tissue, of fat tissue surrounding all your skeleton. So that's one factor. So there is that. But then you also look at, you know, genetic factors of like, what did your parents grow up with? How are they eating growing up? You know, so if that's, you know, if that is passed on to the child, if you know, they're just eating kind of like, you know, meat and potatoes and fried foods and processed foods and things like that going on, and they're not used to having vegetables and water and unprocessed foods, then maybe that's what they're passing on to the children. So more so in Chinese medicine, we talk about pre-heaven and post-heaven. So pre-heaven is kind of what you're born with genetically, but post-heaven is everything that you put into your body after you're born. You know, that includes everything you take in, air, food, water, you know, environment, emotions that play big factors of that too. So, you know, I think I wouldn't put a lot of stock into the factor of genetic factors. Not 100% into it anyway. And really just work on what you have now and what you have to work with.
Okay, that's a really good point to know for us. Thank you. So what are the health consequences of childhood obesity? Let's go into some of the things that you see as more paramount.
Well, before we get into that real quick, just because I want to take a step back real quick, and I want people to understand how you kind of come up with childhood obesity anyway. Like, what are you looking for?
Let's do it.
I mean, one of the first things you're going to see is, you know, you go see your health practitioner, whoever that may be. You know, maybe it's your doctor or pediatrician. Usually your pediatrician will go and like have your yearly health checkups, and they'll see how you are rated on a curve line, you know, based upon how the average person of your height and age and weight and will be. So what they found out that what they see with the BMI charts is, you know, so body mass index is what they're doing. It's a little bit different than just adults' body mass index. They rate that more on a curve. But for people that are overweight, for kids that are overweight, they're in the 85 to 95 percentile. Okay. So when you get that 95 percentile of height and weight, then that's when you're considered an obese child, toddler, adolescent.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the one thing you want to watch out for to be going along with that. In regard to, so knowing those type of things, like what do you want to watch out for? A lot of times kids will get their health screenings, maybe get blood tests, and everything will be hunky-dory, everything will be fine. But, you know, maybe the cholesterol is just fine and things like that. But what other factors are slowing down their own systems in order to be as healthy as they can? Okay. So maybe they're not being able to exercise as much because they have joint pain. Okay, carrying an extra, you know, 40, 50, 60 pounds, that's like carrying, I was at the store the other day and there was a 50-pound bound of dog food. And, you know, I talk about like neck pain and things like that. I'm like, okay, let me put this on my head. Let me put this on the back of my neck to feel what it feels like. And it's like 50 pounds. I mean, I pick up my toddler he's almost 4, but he's like a good solid kid. So he's like almost 40, you know, a little 40 pounds. And so carrying him around an amusement park type of thing, that's a lot of weight to be carrying around, or carrying him on a hike or something like that. And okay, yeah, I better be strong in order to do that. And so, but on a physically daily basis, little things become tougher.
Mm-hmm.
So, joint pain can be one of those things where instead of being able to walk to school, my knees hurt, my back hurts. I don't feel like carrying this because my neck hurts in order to have carrying all this extra weight. So joint pain is definitely one of those things that could be a big factor going on there too.
Albert, may I interrupt
Yeah.
you for a second? Because you brought up something because of your own child's age. Like, how early on does a parent need to be aware of their child developing obesity?
I don't know exactly what the standard is. I'm not sure on that.
Okay.
But knowing that every pediatric yearly visit, they will check you on your bell curve.
Okay.
On that going on. I mean, my 9-year-old, I'm going on 10, still is rated on that bell curve.
Got it.
Is that in height and weight?
Okay.
So your pediatrician on a yearly visit will definitely look at that and take care of that.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
Sure, you got it. So we were talking about some other stuff. With that weight, your heart system, your circulation has to grow and be able to pump the blood all through the body of an extra 40, 50, 60 pounds. Okay, so that can create a lot more pressure in the blood vessels. Mm-hmm. So they found that when, so high blood pressure can be a factor, even when in small children, but definitely growing up. And they found that when children are obese as they get older, they're 3 times as likely to get high blood pressure growing up. Okay, so, you don't want that. The children are more susceptible to type 2 diabetes, mm-hmm. More heart disease, high cholesterol, mm-hmm. Trouble sleeping. If they have in Chinese medicine, we talk a lot about the spleen energy and spleen and digestion going on. And the spleen, large intestine, pancreas. We deal a lot with that, taking care of not any kind of weight loss for that matter, but particularly with people with particularly with metabolic diseases and so forth. Okay, so if there is that spleen deficiency in the body, if there's that energy that's not transporting all the food that you're eating, is basically turning into a sludge, into a fat in your body, then that's going to give you more trouble sleeping as well, because all the tissues around your mouth and your aerial, your airways and things like that are now even more blocked up. Right. So that creates an even more of a concern for sleep apnea as well going on there too. If you're having trouble with digesting, you can actually get gallstones. The bile doesn't produce enough, and the next thing you know, you're having stones in your gallbladder going on there too. So that's not a pretty picture.
No, not at all. And I imagine for children, it's even more challenging because they don't have the ability to articulate and say, my digestion's bothering me.
Sure. It's just my belly's hurting. I mean, that's about it. And then you're like asking questions like, what's going on?
Right.
A simple one is acid reflux. It's like, okay, you got extra fat pressing on the diaphragm going on there. So now it's like you're getting a little acid kind of coming up going on there too. Mm-hmm. Basically, your body's not being able to digest those things. So then they kind of reach for, mom and dad's Tums and things like that growing up. And that's not the way we want to get that standard of healthy living going forward.
Right. Okay. What else?
Well, so I talked about like the spleen and stomach in Chinese medicine. So some of the things that I do as an acupuncturist, right? So as acupuncturists, the main thing we're looking at is balance. We're looking at how does the spleen digest its food? Do you have enough kidney energy to give you that adrenal energy to go through the day? Is your liver stressed or not stressed or more relaxed to allow for the free flow of circulation in your body? Are your lungs being able to express themselves and inspire, inspiration and expiration being very easily to go through that? Or your lungs, your immunity system going through, and the heart, because that brings you joy and circulation and your heart circulatory system going on there too. Mm-hmm. So we're always looking for balance. And so one of the ways we treat, obesity, not only in adults, but in children, is by balancing those organ systems going on in the body. So maybe it's a factor of that spleen being deficient, that the circulatory digestive system not being normalized to do its function properly. Mm-hmm. Okay, so maybe that's our main goal. Maybe it's I'm a larger kid. Kids make fun of me. I'm the last picked in sports on that day, or I can't keep up with everybody. I'm feeling bad about myself. Mm-hmm. That makes me want to eat. Okay.
Right.
So as an example, so then we treat, your liver and your spleen system going on at the same time, so that way we can relax your nervous system to go through these type of things as well. Okay. So little things like that we do as acupuncturists, and one of the things that I hear often is like, oh, you treat children. Are they able to lie down on the table and, with needles in them for half an hour?
Mm-hmm.
And my answer to that is it depends on their age and depends on their disposition. Okay. Because I've got 6-year-olds that have no problem lying on the table for 20 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And I put a few needles in them and they're good. And
Right.
they come out, they're super relaxed and chill walking out. It's awesome to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I have others who, 9, 10-year-olds who are definitely afraid of them. And I use a little clicker pen, almost like a little Bic pen type thing where it actually, clicks in and stimulates the little point on their body. And to do that. And other things that we have, gua sha, which is like a scraping technique on different acupressure points.
Right.
Cupping that we can do. There's, meditative body-mind things that we can do with them as well.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always, so it's not always just put acupuncture and they're going to sit there for a while.
Right.
And I think the biggest thing that people are afraid of is the needles. And
Exactly.
the needles themselves, for anybody out there that has not had acupuncture before and is scared of needles, I think most people think of a hypodermic needle, something that they would have a shot with, and that are open vessels to shoot things with, within your body or take out for that matter. You can fit about a dozen of these little needles inside those hypodermic needles. So they're super tiny, hair thin, they're single use only. And I think most of our people, I'd say probably a good 60% of my patients, I wake up when I walk back in the door half an hour later.
Oh, I'm one of them.
Yeah, right. I mean, you can't be that bad if you're falling asleep with a bunch of needles in you.
No,
So.
but also I think it's important for everyone to understand, that fear that a child might have, adults have that fear too. So,
Oh, yeah.
In reality, we always have an alternative solution to get around this, as you were saying.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So that's how I hope to treat people with that. But, I think that another factor is what else, we deal a lot with lifestyle as well. So in regard to childhood obesity, I mean, one of the biggest things is like, we talk about nutrition in our practice.
Mm-hmm.
We have, Dr. Mao put out a cookbook, right? And so that's a great thing to just kind of have on hand, be like, oh, these are good, they're good for metabolism. This is good for digestive health. This is good for heart health, and so forth. And so different recipes that are out there that you can kind of plug into and go, oh, this is why.
Mm-hmm.
We see it more so than vitamins and minerals. We look at it as, is it hot? Is it cold? Is it pungent? Is it dispersing? Things like that. Will it raise the yin? Will it raise the yang? Yeah.
Can you explain to everyone, why do you look at those certain characteristics?
For instance, let's take, let me go back, let me take one step back to explain it. So in Chinese medicine, we look at the elements in the body. Okay, so there's hot and cold, there's deficient, there's excess, there's interior, exterior, things that goes on in your body, and there's a balance of yin and yang, which they should be kind of like this. Sometimes the yin's a little bit lower, so it feels a little hotter. Sometimes it's like it's way down here, so now you're like really hot and angry. So things like that, we're looking for balance. We already use Chinese medicine principles in the diets and foods that we eat already. Okay, for instance, who likes sushi? Okay, people like sushi. Okay, sushi, the cold the food is essentially on the cold and neutral side. Mm-hmm. That's what we're talking about, like elements and what the temperatures of foods are, not how they're cooked, because you can always cook sushi and be a little warmer or whatever, or whatever with sauces. But generally, fish comes from the sea. It's a little bit colder. Things like that. Seaweed is a little bit colder. It has its nutrients going on there too. It's salty. Okay. But then what do you have served with sushi at the table? You have your pinch of ginger,
right,
and your pinch of wasabi. Mm-hmm. Okay. In Chinese medicine, we use ginger as part of our herbal pharmacopoeia, and one of the main properties is that it is warming. It is, and it is also good for any kind of sickness. Okay, protecting you from sickness, particularly from the fish. Okay, so it warms you up, warms up your belly, so you have the cold and the hot. Right, the wasabi is there if you want to eat some extra hot going on too, also to kill any bacteria as well. So that's kind of doing that same thing. In the winter time, we like spice ciders. Okay, those warm things that we have, the big stews, they have warm and they have a lot of spices in them that warm up the body, right? So you'll see less salads in the wintertime, even in Los Angeles. You'll see less salads in here than you would like soups and stews and things like that. Okay, versus the summertime where like, give me salad, give me watermelon all day long, give me iced drinks, right? Because your body wants to cool off because it's hot.
Right.
So that's the idea of, the Chinese medicine theory to go along with the nutrition. So if you are very hot, maybe, okay, take childhood obesity, for instance. A lot of times we can see on a child's tongue, this is one of the ways we diagnose is the child's tongue and how maybe it's a little larger, maybe it has a hotter, like a redness on the tip. Okay. Maybe it's got a little more coating on the middle area of their tongue, which it talks about the spleen and stomach digestion area going along there. So we would incorporate foods that would be specific for that spleen and stomach digestive area. So things such as yellow and orange foods, for instance. So like sweet potatoes and squashes can be very good to kind of help those things. Okay. If there's a lot of red and heat and stuff going on, well, you can add some vegetables in there. You can add you can add some cooling foods such as like the watermelon or aloe and things like that going on too, to make sure that those are a little bit cooler. So that's where we're trying to find balance in a person going on there too.
Okay. So now let's talk about, still on this theme of nutrition, what about in relation to sugary foods? Because here, you are, and our team is trying to educate on healthy food options, but the reality side of it is many households still have options in their home that are also sugar oriented. Yeah. What is the take? Like, what can parents do about being vigilant about consumption and best practices that are real best practices? Because I think, it's still a child that wants to have fun too.
Oh, sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I see this in my own kids too. It's like, they'd easily reach for they'd love the ice cream and cake or whatever. They'll go to a party and they'll kind of go for it. But
right.
We want them to, it's like we want them to enjoy those things and things like that too, as long as it's okay for their health to be able to do so. Right. I find that with my own kids, if they have too much of it, they'll get a little hyper or things like that, like most kids, right? But what I find is that, okay, how are we doing throughout the week? In my own household, we try to cook a lot. Okay. So I think that's a big thing because the less we go out, then we know what we're eating. Okay. Yes. And we have a lot of staples. It's simple foods. It's, it's chicken, it's fish, it's rice, it's beans, it's vegetables of, green beans, broccoli, and squashes, and things like that. Okay, and it's nothing too crazy. And we like to use our slow cooker because that we can throw it in there, hit the button, and then it'll be done by the time we get home that day. Because that can put a lot of food in there, and it's like you got all your carrots that are chopped up, you got your celery in there, it's all cooked up and good. It's all seasoned really. The house smells delicious when you walk in. I mean, those type of things that to get the kids excited about those type of things too. Spices, I think, go a long way. Okay? I mean, if you're just going to eat vegetables and fish and chicken type stuff all the time, then you better find some variety going along there too. How are you cooking the chicken? Are you baking it? Are you frying it? Are you putting a little bit of hot, are you putting the slow cooker? Things like that. And then what are you squeezing it up with so that people can get excited about what you're eating?
Okay.
I know for my little ones, sometimes if it's too mashed up together, then he won't like it. But if it's separated and it's in funny shapes, and then I make a happy face out of it, then he's more able to eat it. I think the biggest thing when it comes down to, things around the house is what kind of portions are we giving the kids?
That's a really good point, actually. What do you have to say about portion control?
I mean, your palm of your hand is, from here to here is roughly about 4 ounces, for most people, depending on their size of their hand. But think about that, like 4 ounces of food. So think about like, half to, basically less than a palm would be a little serving of something. So whether that be some meat or beans or rice or vegetables going along with that, that's about a serving. So you want on that plate, you want your, fruits and vegetables being half that plate, right? But they can't be huge because if they're like this much, they're not going to eat it all and they'll be overwhelmed with it. And then comes you better eat your food, you're not getting dessert type stuff.
Right.
Then that's kind of like, oh, that's kind of shaming them. And then you grow up being like, oh, I hate broccoli now because my mom always made me eat it.
Mm-hmm.
So we don't want that either. But if you keep the portion controls good, most kids are usually pretty good about it if they are trained to be good about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, if we can let them know, like, hey, are you being full? Are you doing this? And that's all the more reason to not eat while you're watching TV or doing things like that around the house.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me think of like when you go to the movie theater and you get a big thing of popcorn, and all of a sudden, like an hour and a half in, you're like, I finished the darn thing of popcorn.
Because
Right?
it's in front of me.
Yeah, I mean, you never eat something like that, or you know. So those type of things. So not to be distracted, to be with each other at the table, to do that. So practically speaking, in regard to being a parent is, do your best to cook foods.
Mm-hmm.
Don't have any guilt when you have to go out, but make appropriate choices and make appropriate choices in regard to the types of food you eat.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Because all places, even fast food restaurants, have healthier style meals.
I agree.
And smaller portions, right? So those are things you want to watch out for.
Yeah.
Versus getting highly processed, lots of food that's like damp or triple double, like 4x4s in and out. Like, okay, you can do different things.
Mm-hmm.
And also having that family unit to be there with each other and talk about it, so we can be here talking about how the day went and enjoying each other's meals. So mealtime can be a fun time.
Mm-hmm.
To go along with, other than like, okay, you got to eat so you can go back and play again.
Right.
So to incorporate those things.
Do you find that children gravitate, in your experience with the children you've worked with, do they tend to gravitate to specific foods considered like those healthier foods we would want them to eat? Are there certain foods that they favor that, as a parent, like if we had to say, okay, here's 5 vegetables, your child's going to get the nutrients with? I don't know.
It's so dependent. I mean, it's so based upon, I think by the earlier you start them out on different types of vegetables, the better off they're going to be later. Mm-hmm. My kids eat Brussels sprouts. I don't know many kids that do. Mm-hmm. But the staples of stuff like the carrots, the green beans, the broccoli, that type of stuff, the sweet potatoes, I think most of them like that type of stuff. Mm-hmm. But kids got to understand what's sweet also. So like, yeah, a piece of chocolate is sweet. Of course it is. The dollop of ice cream is sweet. And that's overkill, sweet. It's like a big blast of the senses, but like a sweet potato can be sweet. Berries, with a little bit of almond milk or something like that can be sweet with a little bit of cinnamon on top. So doing those little factors like, being real and giving our kids dessert is an okay thing. Mm-hmm. But we got to show them what is sweet to them.
Right.
So that way when they go to Menchie's or some yogurt place and they're like throwing Butterfinger and Oreo on top and slapping on the Hershey syrup, maybe they just want some blueberries. Maybe they want a few of the boba things and they're good to go. Mm-hmm. So little things like that, so they can start making good food choices about themselves. And I think it's okay to educate them on what's what. Mm-hmm. Because, most kids don't know if they don't know.
Right.
So
education is key. As much as we can share in a way that they can absorb, then that's fantastic for them to understand.
Yeah, and certain kids love information.
Yeah.
My kid will watch a YouTube video with me, and it'll be like way over his head, but I'll just simplify it for him, and he'll be like, "Oh, that was cool. I get it." So it's different. I was going to say something there. I forget. Anyway, but just talking to someone about that, and even when it comes down to the idea that they are overweight, they are obese on that scale, on that BMI chart, to have that conversation, be like, you know what, buddy, you're overweight. You're a little too large. Notice you're having trouble finding stuff for your pants. Maybe your shirts don't fit you right. We want to get you a little better so life can be a little bit easier for you. So you can have a little more energy walking around. You can have a little more fun with your friends when everybody's hiking or playing outside. Things like that. You can have more energy throughout the day to read your books or play your games, whatever it is. Mm-hmm. But even having those conversations, not being afraid of it. I think as adults and especially parents, there's that stigma of I'm going to hurt his feelings.
Right.
Well, if I want to be the one to hurt my kid's feelings versus some other 4th grader telling him, hey, you're this, you're that, and bullying him, type of thing.
I agree with you because at least as a parent, one has the power within them to also give tools that are going to empower that child, that individual to speak up with himself with pride and understanding, you know, life is a process.
Yeah.
And there's going to be challenges no matter what. From some direction or another, a child is going to be impacted by something. So the better they can learn to navigate through any type of challenge, it will support them better.
Absolutely. Absolutely. There's the other thing I was thinking about, like dinners and stuff. Not only that, but like the fruit juices, sweetened beverages. I mean, everything from, you know, your Gatorade to your apple juice to your orange juice, to whatever's out there these days. Okay, and that's something we want to watch out for. Let kids know that, hey, water is the best thing out there.
Right.
You know? And if you got to sweeten it with something, but don't, you know, put a dollop of, you know, of orange in it, you know, put some blueberries in it, throw something to sweeten it up if that's what you feel like you need to do. But when it comes down to having those big old beverages, or it drives me crazy seeing, you know, 6-year-olds with a big old Coca-Cola can.
Yeah.
You know, it breaks my heart, honestly. So that's a good thing for them to learn too. When I think about, yeah, kids got to be kids. They're going to go to parties. Go enjoy. What are you going to do? You're not going to be like the soup Nazi from Seinfeld, right? You're like, no food for you. You got to allow them to be that way and to enjoy it, and as long as it's not hurting them physically.
Exactly.
But if you're doing everything else, good. And if you're having something at your house, do it for that special occasion and then put it away afterwards. You know, like Halloween's coming up in October, right? So go to town go and have fun getting candy outside, but know that most of that stuff's going to be gone you know, within a couple days afterwards. It doesn't need to be there. You know, fall is indulgent as enough as it is.
Yeah, and most kids, it's in the moment. Like it really is that night and those few days following.
Yeah.
But if it suddenly disappeared, or if there's a legitimate conversation beforehand saying, hey, we're going to go do this, and it's a fun thing to go do. Let's go celebrate Halloween. But this is the window, or this is the amount that you get for you, and then move on from that. They're generally really fun.
There's places to donate to and things like that for people that don't have that kind of thing, and you can get them excited about that. I have friends that I went to college with. They do something called a Switch Witch. You know, it's like, so they get a prize for turning in their candy, and so they get a toy back or something like that. So
yeah,
little things like that.
On the topic of sweets, one more question for you, because it's become such a huge trend, and I think it's important for parents to know. We are in a cycle right now where there are so many ice cream replacements, and it's like you see the whole section of frozen treats has more than doubled in the last 2 years. What is your take on that? Because I think that there are a lot of parents out there that say, okay, you know what, I'm not going to do then the Ben & Jerry's or the Haagen-Dazs, I'll replace it with XYZ. But is that really a healthier replacement, or isn't it? Like, what would you recommend on that side of it?
Portion control is a big factor.
Okay.
Because if you're going to give a kid a pint of Ben & Jerry's, they'll go through that pint of Ben & Jerry's.
Right.
That type of thing. So it depends on the child and what their circumstances are. But if I had to choose sometimes, I mean, I'd choose like the sorbets, the gelatos, the fruit juice pops, like an Otter Pop, like with the healthy juice and stuff in them, the frozen icicle type things. I choose those things first, you know, as I go along, you know. Okay. But what, you know, when it comes down to going and, you know, the shopping for stuff is like, what kind of things are you having in the house now? So now that they know that's in the house, then they're going to want that all the time.
Correct.
Right? So if you go with Ben & Jerry's, nothing's going to taste like Ben & Jerry's afterwards. So think about, you know, either
don't start it at all, or be
yeah. So it's like, not to rip on Ben & Jerry's, I love them and they're great, but
you know,
but you know, if they're going to have that kind of thing, it is so sweet and so super indulgent that it changes their, you know, their taste buds.
Right.
They no longer know what sweet is. You know, rice can be sweet. It's naturally sweet. You know, most people don't realize that because their taste buds are just so off to know it's sweet. You know, a little bite of dark chocolate, that's pretty sweet. You know, things like that. So.
Okay. Thank you. Good to know. You know, I'm conscious of the time because I know you are going to need to go in about 10 minutes. Can I put in some questions that we have for you from the audience, and then we will wrap up with any last points that you would like to make as well? Is that good?
Of course.
So the first question we have, hold on one second. Okay, what are the best tips for busy families who are ending up eating in the car between school and extracurricular activities?
What snacks are a big thing, right? So one of the things we do in my family, and just helps everybody because we're, you guys have heard of that term, hangry, right? We all kind of get hangry out there. We're a little hungry, angry. We're like, "Arr," get all moody, right? Right. Okay. And so we want to watch out for that. And so from school, right, they've probably eaten, 2-3 hours now at this point. And most kids need to eat 5 times a day. Okay. So they have their snacks, they have their lunch, and they got to have a snack. So if they're going to get, an extracurricular activity afterwards, they got to have some kind of food. So I think the snacks are important. I mean, like Trader Joe's got a bunch of different snacks that we like to use. Costco has some good nutritious snacks that we like to use. Whole Foods, of course, but different places. And we'll always have something, but do your best to try to stay away from too much of the processed food, so that way they don't get that sugar rush and then that sugar crash.
Okay.
So avocados are a big staple in our family because they're a good they're a good, good source of fat and energy, right? Creaminess, it's like the five senses, like the creaminess is like the sixth sense. So it makes you feel good. You want that creaminess going on, so it satiates you a little bit more. Okay. Chocolate, peanut butter pretzels. Peanut butter, sometimes peanut butter and honey. Sometimes they'll sell those little Jason packs that have like almond butter or hazelnut butter or things like that. They come in a little pouch. They're like $1.20 or something like that, and you just a pouch and you squeeze them in your mouth. Things like that. Hummus and crackers. So those are some things that we do. And just the minute we pick up our son is, here you go, here's some snacks for you. And you go from there, and that way he's good until dinner time. Until he'll do that. Now he's got some fuel for his activities for after school, especially for the kids that are really active. So I mean, he plays at the park all the time and does some different things. But for those kids that are going into soccer during around this time, soccer, lacrosse, football, they got to eat, to really fuel themselves, to really go at it. So it's a lot of activity. So I'd start there.
Okay, those are great tips. Thank you. The next question for you on the subject of tips again. What tips do you have for super picky toddlers to keep their eating on track when they don't want anything healthy?
Okay, so super picky. So I'm assuming super picky tends to go with like, I'm only going to eat pasta and I want chicken fingers, peanut butter sandwiches, that type of stuff. Okay, so how can we make those things healthier? Pastas, there's all types of different pastas out there. There's egg pasta, there's whole wheat pasta, there's rice pasta, there's a whole bunch of different things. So you can start modifying that, not change the sauce yet. If you're doing a sauce going on, maybe it's just butter, right? Maybe it's just butter and a little bit of salt, but just try to modifying those type of things first. So like with the chicken fingers, for instance, like make sure you're using good quality chicken. Okay, get organic, get pasture raised going along with that too. Cook it yourself, so you're using good olive oil. You're using good, hemp oil or whatever else you like to cook with. Stay away from the vegetable oils and the canola oils, right? Those aren't so good for you, the seeds. So you're better off with like the olive oil, okay? And doing it that way, lightly fry things like that. Cut them in strips, cut them in fun adventure type things where they can enjoy themselves. So it can be a fun adventure for them.
Yep. Cutters are a parent's best friend.
Yeah, really are. You really are. And you don't think of them until you're actually a parent and they're like, oh yeah, I could chop this thing and make it into this shape. And it's like, it's fun.
It's a chicken dinosaur.
Yeah, exactly. French fries, try sweet potato fries, but actually bake them.
Okay.
So that's an easy thing to do. Steaming your vegetables and adding a flavored type of butter on top of them, which, a little fat for children. Actually, kids metabolize, smaller children, toddlers especially, metabolize their fat and actually use more fat as fuel more so than carbohydrates. So it's I don't know why exactly the switch changes later on, but they tend to use a lot more of that fat and metabolize that a lot easier. So don't be afraid to give your kids some butter and things like that to go along with their meals and flavor things up a little bit.
Okay. That actually leads into the next question for you. If you can take one more question for us.
Yeah, of course. Sure.
Can you walk through an example of a healthy eating plan for a child? I know you've mentioned things, but if you had to actually think, that was a big question that came up from a couple of different people.
Sure. Okay, so eat 5 meals a day. Okay, that'd be kind of the first thing. Eat 5 meals a day. Breakfast is your friend. Okay, because they need the fuel to go to school with. They're not gonna, be on top of, sitting there and taking in all that. They got to keep in mind like that they digest not just food, but they digest information. So you got to feed them in order so they have that energy to digest that information too.
Mm-hmm.
So 5 meals a day, eating breakfast, and eating breakfast as a family, but be a role model in what you eat for breakfast. Don't just grab a cup of coffee and a bagel and expect them to eat any different.
Right.
Okay. So maybe it's shakes, maybe it's protein shakes that you add a little something into it. We sometimes do protein shakes with berries and avocado, and we throw some kale into the blender, and we do that, and they like it. And it goes down. It's like no big deal. But in the morning, I think of proteins and fats because that's going to sustain them throughout the day. Maybe there's some whole grain toast in there. Maybe it's some oatmeal, like a steel cut out type of thing as well. That can do that with berries and almond milk to go along with that. Maybe a little cinnamon on top. You got that going on. In regard to breakfast, have something warm throughout in the morning.
Okay.
Have something warming in the morning. So even if you're gonna do that shake or whatever else, you gotta warm it up a little bit. So that way you're putting nice hot fuel into their digestive system because that's their oven, right? And you don't want to pour cold water on that oven first thing in the morning because it's going to be doing the work of digesting everything.
Oh, that's a really good point. Thank you.
So make sure you're putting something warm into their bodies. Actually, cook something. I mean, we like eggs. We like some turkey sausage. Things like that too that go along. We do avocados in the morning. We throw some berries on there to make it fun. Scoop of peanut butter. Those type of things for breakfast is some of our staples that we do here.
Mm-hmm.
And it gives them fuel for their lunch and things like that. So 5 meals, good breakfast, model behavior. Model that behavior of what you're going to eat. So if they're eating good, you'll be good too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure what else to meal plan. Lunches can vary. So if they're picky about stuff, then maybe it's the pastas, maybe it's the chicken, maybe it's the carrots, maybe it's those little prepackaged. Make your own prepackaged Lunchables.
Right.
Like the Ritz crackers and the cheese.
Right.
We have a little lunch box that has like a bunch of compartments to it, so that we can create our own little Lunchable type thing.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot, and it varies, with different things. So, and then pack 2 or 3 snacks in their backpack so they can have something to go to.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're not going to crack open their lunch and eat their pasta, but they will grab. Maybe it's a little Baby Bell cheese or a stick of string cheese, or maybe it's a little packet of almond butter or peanut butter or whatever you like. So those type of things they can reach for and grab, and they can start making good choices.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it comes down to a kid, going to the fridge or going to their backpack, like, I don't know what else to eat. My friend's got a granola bar. I'm going to eat this granola bar. It's got chocolate chips in it. I'm excited. So those are the kind of things that I would look at when I think about meal plan. But it takes planning. It takes, the night before, making their lunches and doing that type of thing and adding whatever you feel like is hot for the next day and doing that in the morning. So you don't have to do the whole thing. It's less stress on the parents too, to be able to do that as well. Yeah.
And in truth, I mean, we talk so much about meal planning for adults on a regular basis and say, you having that structure around you is a foundation for weight wellness, knowing what you're going to eat for the week instead of just dashing to get something last minute all the time.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think about when I myself get home from work, I'm like, I'm a little hungry and I'm still not going to eat for a couple hours.
Right.
Then, I'm like, what am I going to grab? And I, sometimes if I'm not seeing enough options, I'll end up grabbing like just a piece of bread and be like, oh, I'm just going to eat this thing. So it's like you find those good choices for your kids and model those behaviors as well.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I hope that answers the questions for those out there. I know we're coming up on the hour now. So what would be the last wisdom, the final wisdom you'd like to share with us for tonight?
I think coming from your heart is a big factor,
Mm-hmm.
you know, for kids with childhood obesity or kids that are overweight. I mean, that's a big thing, to be with your children in ways that, one, model good habits and behavior,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and to show them like, hey, I'm with you. I'm here as part of your team. I'm here to, you know, help you get through whatever you got to get through during this time period. I think that goes a long way, you know, because as parents, we have our own stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and we have our own stresses going on, right? So, but if we do our best to try to take care of those and really just compartmentalize and be with our kids in those times, because whenever maybe they act out, that's our opportunity to be with them and figure out why.
Mm-hmm.
What's the underlying thing why they're acting out? It's always something.
Mm-hmm.
But in regard to childhood obesity, it's like we got to be there for them so they are healthier in the future.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so, you know, looking at it selfishly, like I want them to be healthy so one day we, you know, they'll be in their 40s and 50s and we'll be just playing golf together, going for walks together, whatever it may be, and I'll be playing with my grandchildren, you know.
Right.
Versus seeing a future where they are in hospitals, where they are having operations, where they have to have medication for lots of different ailments. I definitely don't want to see that for my own kid. So, you know, think future, but, you know, really act present.
Mm-hmm.
As you go along.
Okay. Oh, thank you. Thank you. That, I mean, I think that is such valuable wisdom for somebody to understand, is being present. And we ask it of ourselves, so it's important to ask it of our next generation too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And don't be afraid to reach out. I mean, community is a huge factor.
It takes a village.
It totally does, you know, especially with something like this. It's like, you know, can we get families together and go do something fun?
Yeah.
You know, I'm like, hey, so-and-so, why don't you meet your family and my family? We'll meet at the park at 4. You know, it's a nice thing to have that community. Hey, let's come over and let's go swimming, or let's go play soccer in the backyard, or whatever. Let's go play Frisbee, whatever it may be. You know, but to be creative and to have that family so that everybody gets to kind of work together, and that way you get a lot of things done, and you know, you can reflect on each other's challenges and successes as well. So, yeah.
So much good advice. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
You're welcome, Tiffany. Thanks for having me. It's been a pleasure.
Oh, absolutely. And for everyone that is tuning into this, as Albert mentioned at the beginning of the episode, he did write an article on this topic as well as part of our Dow Wellness September newsletter. So you are able to view that online, correct? On the website?
Correct. Yeah, if you go on our towelwellness.com website, it's right down. You scroll down a little bit, you'll see the newsletter.
Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again for being on here with us tonight. Thank you to those of you who have tuned into this episode. And we will be back in October with all new episodes for you. So just watch out for our calendar, and those will be starts on October 7th with Dear Dr. Mao. He's talking about the dark side of autumn, your personality. So we welcome you back again next month, and enjoy a lovely rest of September. Take care, everyone.
Bye everyone. Thank you.
Thanks, Albert.
Sure, Tiffany.